5th January is marked as the Right to Self-Determination Day for Kashmiri people. On 5th January 1949, United Nations adopted resolution guaranteeing plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir. For over 7 decades, Kashmiris continue to wait for implementation of United Nations resolution. India's rejection of Kashmir's basic right to self-determination is violation of United Nations Charter. It is responsibility of United Nations to implement its 5th January 1949 resolution on Kashmir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I am your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, after the first Kashmir war, it was India who approached the United Nations. United Nations Security Council then passed a resolution on this day, 5th January 1949. The resolution states, and I quote, "The question of accession of the state of Jammu and Kashmir to India and Pakistan will be decided through the democratic method of a free and impartial plebiscite." Unfortunately, after 7 decades and even more than 7 decades, United Nations still unable to implement its own resolutions. But the Kashmiris across the valley of Kashmir, Jammu and all other areas under the illegal occupation of India, they are determined to carry on their struggle for the right of self-determination. Pakistan stood firm with the Kashmiri sisters and brothers diplomatically, morally and politically. But unfortunately, this internationally recognized issue of Jammu and Kashmir still remain unresolved. On this particular day, which is very important in the history of Pakistan and Kashmir issue, we are going to talk some of the grave issues and the current circumstances which is going on, and today Kashmiris are facing the blatant violations of human rights against them by the Indian occupation forces. Today, to discuss this issue, we have in our studios Saira Ijaz. She is the analyst. Most welcome to you, Saira. And also we have Advocate Parvez Ahmed Shah Sahab. He is the leader from All Parties Hurriyat Conference. So most welcome to you, sir, as well. And online, Dr. Wasim Ishaq joining us. He is the senior analyst. Most welcome to you, sir. First question, I am starting from you, Parvez Sahab, that how do you see the Kashmiris' brave, undeterred struggle and their overwhelming determination and immense sacrifices?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you on behalf of All Parties Hurriyat Conference, which represents heartbeats and aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, for showing solidarity with the people of Jammu and Kashmir, especially today when it is a right to self-determination day. The people of Indian occupied Kashmir, Azad Kashmir and Kashmir around the world are observing this day and reiterating that they will take this movement to the logical conclusion. So how the situation developed, it is very important to have a cursory glance on the pages of the history.
Yeah, definitely, it is very important. Really.
So it was not as a result of the war that India took matter to the United Nations. Basically, in 1947, when the subcontinent was partitioned, and there was a formula given to the princely states, especially there were more than 525 princely states, and they have been given the option to either join India or Pakistan. And the ratio was that those states who have the Muslim majority, they have to join to Pakistan, and those who were the Hindu states, they had to join to India. This was the formula. And Jammu and Kashmir was an independent state. It has its own sovereign character, it has its own flag, it has its own laws. And however, unfortunately,
it was independent in all respect.
It was independent in all respects, because when India is talking about the instrument of accession, it makes it clear that when you are going to make an instrument of accession with somebody, it had its own sovereign character. If it had been an Indian state, there was no need to sign any such kind of instrument of accession. So, the instrument of accession which India believes is, you cannot see it in the archives of India or not, it has been presented before any international forum. However, if we agree to it that the forged, concocted agreement which India is talking about, even if in this agreement three things were surrendered before the India. That is, as you are well aware, that is defense, communication and foreign affairs. It means the sovereignty was still retained by the then Maharaja. So when India occupied it on 27th of October, there was a strong resistance from the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because people were not ready to join India, because the instrument of accession was signed against the wishes and aspirations of the people of India. Took the matter to the United Nations. It was India.
Yes, it was.
And
India.
There were two resolutions. One was on 13th of August 1948 and this 5th of
5th
January.
Of January.
So these two, especially when we talk of this resolution, the 5th of January, it states clearly that the people of Jammu and Kashmir will be right to self-determination. It is not only this, when the instrument of accession...
Through a free and impartial
yes,
plebiscite.
when instrument of accession was even signed at that time, the Governor General of India, Lord Mountbatten, in his letter, wrote that this will be subject to reference to the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Definitely.
So it means that, and at the same time, when this resolution was passed, the then Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, in Srinagar, while speaking to a public gathering, clearly stated that we do not believe in forced marriages. And in addition to this, he wrote multiple communications to the government of Pakistan that this is a commitment to Pakistan, to international community and the people of Jammu and Kashmir, that they will be given this right to self-determination.
Definitely.
But however, we are still waiting for this.
When, Saira, when we are talking about the important resolution, this one, 5th of January 1949, United Nations and the international community, they have promised to the Kashmiris that the right of self-determination will be given to them through a plebiscite. So, where they are today after 75 years?
Thank you for this question. I think that it's political, international politics is always a very critical, complex maze to understand, first of all. Number two, I think I would like to highlight those member countries which were part of the United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan back in 1948. That is Argentina, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, and above all, and the most important, the current superpower, the US. They were the members of that commission which actually passed this resolution and gave this universal basic human rights to the people of Kashmiris. I think diplomatic efforts should be made.
You're talking about United Nations Commission on India and Pakistan
to resolve
Kashmir.
On the question of Kashmir. So I think diplomatic efforts should be made that those country members should be engaged to resolve this lifelong, like 70 years old, more than 70 years old issue. And I think that's the double standards of international community, because when it comes to the interest of West and the Europe or other developed countries, they call the right of Ukraine is the right of self-determination. They have the right of self-determination against Russia, but when it comes to Palestine and Kashmir, they are mum on this issue.
Unfortunately, these are the two issues pending from the last many decades.
And above all, the so-called the secular democratic setup of India, which India called itself a secular democratic country, is actually not denying the democratic process within the one of its state illegally occupied with it. If they believe in democracy, why they don't go for the democratic process within that state? Because they know that what are the aspirations of the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Your point well taken. Parvez, when United Nations has at least in the last 7 or more than 7 decades, at least 18 of the resolutions on Kashmir, and they are very powerful resolutions. Every resolution states that there must have to be an independent, fair, free and impartial plebiscite, but none of them were ever implemented.
The reason is that the stubbornness of the Indian government, because India knows that what is the ground reality. Because as my guest said just that India is aware of this fact what is writing on the wall.
Okay.
Because there is a strong resistance against India. That is the reason that India is creating major hurdles. But however, because there is, if we go through the United Nations Charter, it is clearly written when you are getting the membership, you have to contribute to the international peace. On the basis of this, you are being given the membership. However, India has been the country which has violated. It is disturbing, and you can say that it is not implementing the resolutions of the United Nations which are binding on it and which he has accepted.
Always violating the international laws.
Because India knows it that the freedom movement has a strong support of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and it is not going to decide in favor of India. That is the reason, because we have seen on the 5th of August, they have annexed it. Because in 1947 they occupied, on 5th of August they annexed it, and now they are going for the settlers' colonies. Because you know that more than 500,000 these domicile certificates have been issued to the people. The reason is that they are going to change the demographic composition, knowing the fact that if tomorrow the United Nations asks India and Pakistan to implement these resolutions, definitely the decision will be against the government of India. That is the reason that they have annexed it, and they are now going for the.
They are changing the overall demography
of the
and
people
even issuing the domiciles and all that.
But it is a healthy sign that none of the Indians have so far, although they have been given the right, but they have not started to settle in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, because they know it that atmosphere is not conducive for them, because there is war is going on, people are on the streets. How it is possible for the Indians to go and settle their businesses in India?
They are under some sort of a fear.
They are under sort of a fear that
it
will not be possible. But India is making every attempt to settle these non-Kashmiris in Indian occupied.
Your point well taken. Dr. Wasim, when we are talking about, as Parvez Sahab has said, that on August 5th of 2019, it was again replicated, and it was straight away an attack on Kashmir, that Modi regime revoked the special status of Kashmir, snatched the basic rights and put the Kashmiris into an open prison. What would be the future?
Faisal, before coming directly on to the answer of these questions, I would like to highlight a few more things which my two previous colleagues have also highlighted. We are actually witnessing the double standards of international system, whereby whenever something is actually relevant to them from their perspective, they give a lot of incentives for its operationalization. The issue of South Sudan, the issue of East Timor, and issue of Kosovo. Just in last about 2 to 3 decades, we have seen all these developments happening. However, when it comes to Palestine and when it comes to Kashmir, since it is not in the interest of those great powers, so probably it is lingering on since last 75 years. The situation has been getting worse in a sense that the special status of Jammu and Kashmir has been revoked since 2019. And we have seen the biggest military operations being going on in this part of the region. More than 700,000 Indian troops are deployed in one way or the other in this small area of Kashmir. And more than 100,000 Kashmiris, innocent Kashmiris, have actually lost their lives, and almost a similar number have been injured so far in the freedom struggle. But the silver lining is that despite 76 years of brutal aggression and repression, the spirit of freedom and spirit for the struggle for freedom is yet alive with a lot of vigor and with a lot of enthusiasm. This is a silver lining. And see the credibility of United Nations. Having passed the resolution by itself for self-determination in Jammu and Kashmir, unfortunately, the United States has not been able to establish its own credibility when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir. But the people of Kashmir on both sides of LOC are very resilient people. The Pakistani nation stands behind our Kashmiri brethren for their freedom struggle. We would lend them, as we have been doing in the past, all moral, diplomatic, and every support. And we will continue this support till the time the illegal Indian occupation does not end. Whatever Indians may do from their perspective, from their part, the liberation struggle will continue till the time the Jammu and Kashmir is completely liberated, as per the wishes of people of Kashmir, which Jawaharlal Nehru himself promised at more than 12 occasions in public gatherings, in letters to United Nations, in letter to Pakistan. However, those have not been fulfilled even till today. The far-right Modi regime, actually this was its election slogan, and as we move to the election year next year, this year, 2024, probably some sort of brutality in Kashmir is going to increase. However, that will further strengthen the resolve of Kashmiri people for their liberation struggle. So I'm very optimistic that whatever the Modi regime may do, it is not going to dishearten the freedom struggle of Kashmiris.
So, Dr. Wasim, you have just mentioned about East Timor and South Sudan. So, in that perspective, do you think that it's basically the religion or some sort of vested interest prevail, because Kashmir and Palestine still burning?
It is something mixed actually. It is religion as well, but we have seen in Kosovo it's not majority is Muslims. So, but it actually suited the great powers to do it that way, because Kosovo was to be separated from the erstwhile communist system. So therefore, it suited to those great powers in their national interest. So in case of Kashmir, from the religious perspective, from the region perspective, and from the demographic perspectives, it is not as important for those great powers as those three things which we just highlighted: South Sudan, East Timor, and Kosovo. However, it's not that all the great powers are having the same view. We have seen a very rational view of China ever since last 76 years. China has maintained a principal stance that this issue has to be resolved through bilateral negotiations as per the resolution of the United Nations. And we have also seen Russia is also trying to balance out its relations with India as well as with Pakistan, and actually trying to take out something middle ground on Kashmir issue. Is not coming out in support of Kashmir with Pakistan, but it's not at the same time trying to annoy India. So trying to reposition and balance its relations. So with respect to United States, yes, it has given a huge incentive and given a lot of relevance to India with respect to its next role coming for containment of China. So therefore,
so when we are talking about the relevance of India, and the international community keeps mum on most of the matters, when India stripped off Article 370 and 75A from its constitution, international community was completely mum on that. Then when Indian Supreme Court on December 11th last year, 2023, they have just rejected all those petitions which were against these moves what India has done. So international community was mum on that. So when international community comes up to resolve this issue?
I think the only way out is that we must continue to support this Kashmiri struggle at all forums. We need to actually highlight these issues on all such days within Pakistan, within Kashmir, to our friends and allies, with the regional powers and as well as great powers and the United Nations forum. So we and the OIC forum, Arab League forum, GCC forum, and all other multilateral forums like BRICS, SCO, ASEAN, etc. So we have to continue providing them all moral support and continue to highlight this issue so that it remains alive. And I'm very optimistic that since international system is now undergoing a fair transition, whereby the United States is now a declining power and China and Russia are actually the other rising powers. So no sooner the international system is fully transited, which in the overall global system we appreciate, next about 15 to 20 years would be very significant and very important, when we see the rising powers should be coming to a level where they can challenge the status quo power. So hopefully, as we continue to support this freedom struggle, by the time the international system is completing its transition, hopefully the Security Councils and the overall United Nations outlook will not be the one which is looking today. So I'm very optimistic that in those years, the United Nations outlook will certainly change. China would have a more assertive and Russia would have a more assertive outlook. So that will be a fair enough time when these things could be resolved through negotiations with the good offices of the United Nations.
Your point well taken, Dr. Wasim. Parvez, when we are talking about United Nations failure and along with that the international community's silence, do you think that this has given India a much leverage to commit war crimes within the occupied territory, along with genocide, extrajudicial murders and all that?
Definitely, because the human rights are universal. They cannot be for a specific country and you have different standards.
Definitely.
But one thing I would like to add, that if we give the leverage to India that it is a growing economic power, at the same time we must take this fact into consideration that Kashmir is struck in three nuclear powers: China, Pakistan and India. It is not only India and Pakistan, but China is also a major shareholder in this.
Definitely.
Because India is in habit of triggering the situation anytime. We have seen in 2018 elections, they made the Pulwama attack. You might be remembering,
Yes,
in which
yes,
40,
yes. On
more than
14th
40
of February,
troops were killed.
2019.
In
14th of February.
they made this. They triggered the situation. They made the so-called Balakot attacks, and they made the escalation at the borders.
And that was the time when India was preparing for
Yes, it
elections.
was for the
And
elections.
now again they are preparing
Again
for
it is
elections.
going for the elections, and I think that in 2014 elections this kind of situation may also trigger, because India is making the ground. Because one of our political leaders, Yasin Malik, who was given life imprisonment, they have filed the appeal against that order. They are asking for the capital punishment, when we are knowing that international community is always talking that this punishment should be abolished. But however, India, and at the same time you have seen escalation in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir in the human rights violations, and I think, and I have a hunch that they are going to trigger the situation before coming elections, because they have started the blame game against the Pakistan. So in this situation, it will drag international community. I am sure that India is such a obnoxious and such a nonsense power that it will escalate the situation, which will drag international community. But at the same time, one thing we have to keep in mind, just India made human rights violations, disappearances. It had killed, if we see for the last 75 years, more than 500,000 people have been killed. In 1947, more than 300,000 people, and it was a genocide of its unique kind. Had this genocide been committed anywhere in the world, there have been hundreds of movies, but unfortunately we didn't take that genocide to any international community.
Your
that
point
was
well
our
taken.
lack.
Your point
So-
well taken, Saira. Why there is no action against India when India is doing such kind of blatant violations of human rights? They are having genocide, extrajudicial killings, war crimes, every sort of inhuman act committed by India. But why there is no action?
The global powers, they want to curtail China through India, and they have so far made India their strategic partner. And I think they want to give this, they are supporting India in this atrocious universal human rights violation, and because of their own personal interests. All alone, no country in this world, as a student of international relations, I can see that no country alone can do anything on their own, because everything and every country is connected with each other geopolitically, geoeconomically, geostrategically. So I think we need to understand this thing. But answer to this is also that we should, being the party to this conflict, we should come up with some new innovative, with new energized diplomatic efforts to raise this issue. But I think the time will come. We have seen that now the Palestine's issue is just on the forefront, and I hope that Kashmir issue should be resolved through peaceful negotiations. And but I think time will come when the limit will cross. But we should hope, we should strive, we should give our best, and we should do all our diplomatic efforts to resolve this issue.
Thank you. There are lots of things are going on that, Professor, when we are talking about the Kashmir issue, the international community's responsibilities, when human rights abolished, lots of Hurriyat leaders along with thousands behind the bars, and right now there are at least 6 political parties, the real-time political voices, the resistant movement parties are banned by the Modi regime. So what would be the ultimate future? Because India is curbing each and every voice which is there for independence.
No, it is true, but unfortunately, India has failed so far to curb the freedom movement. India has, you see, the major problem at this time with the Kashmiris is that there is a complete blackout in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and you cannot get the news. Whatever news is coming from, it is smuggled. And at the same time, the Indian Modi media, corporate media, is portraying every
Actually, the Godi media.
Yeah, it is portraying every Kashmiri as a terrorist. This is where we have to work on the international level, that those who are being killed, those are innocent people. Because you see, you have the reporters that any person who is being killed by Indian occupation forces, they are dubbing him as a terrorist. If we see the statement of
Genocide Watch has given the report. Amnesty International has given the report. Even the United Nations Human Rights Commission has given 2 reports in
2018 and 2019.
Clear reports on Indian atrocities.
You see that if we talk of the former Chief of the Army Staff of India, that was Bipin Rawat, he in his statement once said that in 2016 to 2000, that the total number of freedom fighters in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir is 150, 160. But so far from that date, thousands of the people have been killed, but still those 160 people are there. So they are what India is talking. We have to at least at this, when we know that in Indian occupied Kashmir the media has been silenced, what is the responsibility of the state of Pakistan to present to that perspective and what is happening in India occupied Jammu and Kashmir? That is the reason this Pakistan television is working and providing us a support. That is the reason still we are alive in Jammu and Kashmir. And this is the responsibility of the media channel, media houses in Pakistan. When we are talking of the national issue, it is a national issue. They should at least play.
Thank you very much for the compliment to Pakistan television, but it's the sole responsibility, the sheer responsibility.
At the same time, we must discuss the fault lines of the India. We have never been talking on the fault lines where we see the Indian media is talking about Balochistan, anything, even the issue of domestic violence is being portrayed in such a way in India that there is a chaos and confusion in Pakistan. One thing is very important for the Pakistan at this time, that what is important for the people of Jammu and Kashmir and for Pakistan, that is sustenance of the movement and preservation of the resources.
Definitely.
Because when this movement will sustain, definitely it will give results, today or tomorrow. If this comes to an end, this moment. So at this time, the Pakistan, the political parties of Pakistan, the diaspora, because we don't have any diaspora from Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, we have never been allowed to travel outside India. The Pakistani diaspora at international level, they have to work together.
And the Kashmiris from Azad Kashmir.
Kashmiris from the Azad Kashmir. This is a very important, and at the same time, we have to exercise the lawfare.
And they are doing a lot for Kashmir.
Yes, they have been.
For Kashmir cause, they are doing
They
a
have
lot
to
really.
work very hard.
Definitely. Your point well taken. And Dr. Wasim, when we are talking about United Nations, how do you see the inability of United Nations to redeploy its military observer group in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, because they were expelled from that territory from the last many years?
I think, as I highlighted, that the credibility of United Nations is under question. The deployment of UNMOGIP since last 76 years, not really doing anything and not going across the line of control towards the Indian side, is a big question mark. The efficacy and overall their efficiency is also a big question mark. Unfortunately, they have been just forwarding a small reports here and there and not actually even highlighting the Indian atrocities. And they do not have any such sort of system from where they can get and verify the reports from across the line of control. So therefore, this organization has been highly underutilized. And as I said earlier also, the United Nations itself has not done any sort of introspection with respect to the implementation of its own resolution on Jammu and Kashmir. Despite having resolution in 1948, 1949, 1951, and 1957, and also several occasions, Pakistan has been taking this issue to the General Assembly as well as Security Council. The net effect is that at least this Kashmir issue is alive on the international agenda. But one thing we also have to keep in mind, that there is no any innovative diplomatic solution that we go for some other sort of solution. Unfortunately, in the past, there were different solutions which were discussed through think tanks, through different seminars and conferences, and also through certain press conferences through a primary data. There is only one solution, and there is only one thing which Kashmiris would agree. That is the plebiscite, which has been enshrined by the UN Security Council resolutions and which has been firmly pledged by Jawaharlal Nehru. There is no other option. It's only one option, whether people agree or people do not agree. And we have to continue pressing United Nations Security Council for getting its own resolution implemented. India has been hiding behind the Simla agreement and behind Tashkent, where it says that we made it specifically bilateral. There is no such issue. You can't take out the United Nations. Even if you are talking bilaterally, the UN Security Council resolutions remain alive. So therefore, it is a unique opportunity for us to re-energize our diplomatic missions abroad in those countries, especially which matter to Pakistan and to Kashmir, like the European Union, the European countries, United Nations, United States, China, and Russia. And we have to actually raise our voice at all such levels. And hopefully the time would come when there will be somebody sitting and discussing this issue and getting this issue resolved, because it is actually a threat to the international peace and security, because we have two nuclear states. They are arch rivals, and there is something which is called unresolved issue, which is lying on the table since 76 years. And as the Modi government goes for more atrocities, the more flashpoint would occur at the international agenda. So we don't have to be worried because of the atrocities. We have to sacrifice, yes, but we have to continuously pursue this agenda for the resolution of Kashmir issue.
So, Dr. Wasim, do you think that India emerges as an apartheid, and India has, particularly the Modi regime, has abolished all sort of redressal forums along with the justice system for the Kashmiri Muslims particularly? I am talking about Kashmiri Muslims because overall there are lots of other factions are living in Kashmir. So, what about that? And do you think that after such type of situation within Kashmir, the Kashmiris would be, might be going to think about some sort of an armed struggle?
There has been a lot of identical things happening, and I see probably one template has been used by the government of Israel and the government of India in terms of dealing with people in Palestine and people in Kashmir. We can see a lot of similar tactics is being used by both these governments. Irrespective of what they do, they cannot actually reduce the spirit for the freedom struggle.
Just mention about that whether India is following the footsteps of Israel.
I've said, as it appears, there's a lot of synchronization between the two governments. They must be using certain intelligence resources. They must be coordinating certain ground tactics. And the way they have been dealing with the Muslims in a similar manner, Prime Minister Modi has been dealing with the Muslims inside Kashmir and overall inside India. So I can see a lot of similarity. And in both cases, there's a great power which is actually supporting them. So in that context, as long as their relevance stays with the great power, which is the status quo power, probably the status quo would prevail. But the status quo can no longer sustain beyond a certain time limit when the other rising powers will also take the lead role. So in that context, the international system is, which is already going a fast transition, is going to change in times to come. So I'm very optimistic that things would get better. The freedom struggle has to continue, and we must keep highlighting all these at all international levels, at all multilateral forums, and at all bilateral forums, etc.
Your point well taken, Professor. When we are talking about Kashmir, the Kashmiris are losing their identity. The question of identity is very important these days, because at the hand of Indian atrocities, and particularly the state terrorism going on, and the Indian intention to change the demographics. So how do you see this identity question?
Well, this is a very important question, because Pakistan has to address it at any cost, because if you are going to settle the non-Kashmiris in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, definitely in future it will compromise your right to self-determination, because India has adopted two-pronged strategy in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. One is elimination of the Kashmiris, and at the same time settle the non-Kashmiris. Because when you are killing Kashmiris on a daily basis, it is a living person who has to exercise right to self-determination.
Yes.
That cannot exercise.
Yes.
So definitely you have to take both factors into consideration, that at the on one hand you don't have to allow India to get non-Kashmiris settled. Although people of Jammu and Kashmir are resisting by one way or the another way, but how long? Because on how long they will bear Indian brand? Because we see we have mass graves in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. People are being killed every day, and you have seen few days back the videos are surfacing on the internet that they have arrested people and they have tortured, and now they are posting these videos. Indian government is posting on these different Facebook IDs, so that giving the impression to the people of
Professor, well said, well elaborated.
So they are giving the impression to the Kashmiris that this, if you will not resist, you will not be allowed to live.
Viewers, here is an important report regarding the Kashmir, so please watch it.
Modi-led Indian government continues to deprive the innocent people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir of their properties to penalize them for their struggle against Indian illegal occupation. In Ganderbal district of Indian illegally occupied Kashmir, the properties of 5 Hurriyat leaders Muhammad Yusuf, Bashir Ahmad, Muhammad Rafiq, Muhammad Sakhi, and Hilal Ahmad are confiscated under the cover of a false litigation against them. Prior to this, Modi administration has confiscated the APHC headquarters building in Srinagar and properties of Syed Ali Gilani Shaheed, Shabir Ahmad Shah, Asia Andrabi and many other leaders in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The Indian illegal administration has also demolished several residential sites, shops, shopping complex and similar other structures of the people of occupied Kashmir.
फ़लस्तीन तो फिर भी बेटर ऑफ है, उनकी तो कोई लोग बात करते हैं, ये तो अफ़गानिस्तान से बदतर हो रहा है। जिस तरह से वहाँ बुलडोज़र लेके लोगों के घरों को तोड़ा जा रहा है, टीन वाले मकान है बेचारे लोगों के, उनको तोड़ा जा रहा है।
It has become a norm to deprive the innocent Kashmiris of their properties in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir. The only reason behind this hostility by Modi regime is to detach them from their freedom struggle. Further, immediately after the abrogation of Article 370 on 5th August 2019, Indian occupation forces started destroying the houses of Gujjar families who were dwelling in the forests of Jammu and Kashmir for centuries. Not only this but also, Modi-led Indian government, in the name of encroachments, started demolition and attachment of the properties of the innocent Kashmiris. Subsequently, the voices of the Hurriyat leaders and other freedom-loving Kashmiris against this hostility are silenced with the fake litigations and by confiscating their properties.
जम्मू कश्मीर में अपने ही लोगों को अपनी ज़मीनों से निकाला जा रहा है, ये कह के कि ये एंटी एनक्रोचमेंट ड्राइव है। एंटी एनक्रोचमेंट ड्राइव नहीं है। पहले तो हम सोचते थे कि जो इसराइल करता है फ़लस्तीन के साथ, शायद बीजेपी ने वहीं से सबक सीखा है। अब तो लगता है वो भी नहीं है, तो उससे भी आगे चला गया है। ये तो फ़लस्तीन से लेके अब अफ़गानिस्तान बनाना चाहते हैं जम्मू कश्मीर को। मैं इसलिए कंपैरिजन करती हूँ कि जो बीजेपी की सरकार है, इट इज़ बिहेविंग लाइक एन ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी इन कश्मीर।
Kashmiris are the indigenous people of the land. Whereas, India is trying best to change the demography of Kashmir. For this, the properties of the indigenous Kashmiris are being bulldozed and seized. Not only this but also India is granting citizenship to non-Kashmir people by purchasing properties in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir. Pakistan has categorically condemned these illegal and inhuman moves by Modi-led Indian administration and cautioned to stop violating the international laws.
We are concerned about the recurring acts of confiscation of properties of Kashmiri activists and human rights defenders in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. India's National Investigation Agency and the State Investigation Agency have moved aggressively to seize immovable properties of several Kashmiri activists. It is concerning that just SIA has attached 124 such properties since its establishment in 2021. We condemn India's recent move to confiscate the property of All Parties Hurriyat Conference spokesperson and Tehreek-e-Hurriyat leader Ayaz Akbar in Srinagar. Mr. Akbar remains behind bars since 2017 on fictitious charges. India must end dispossessing the political leaders and human rights defenders of their rightful properties. Kashmiris are the rightful heirs to their own land. It is unfortunate that non-Kashmiris are being encouraged to buy land and property in the disputed territory while the properties of Kashmiris are being confiscated and destroyed.
Modi's evil plans can never shatter the spirit of people of Kashmir. India must stop the state terrorism in Kashmir and ensure Kashmiri's right to self-determination.
Viewers, you were watching a detailed report on Indian illegally held Jammu and Kashmir, and thank you very much for our guests here, Saira Ijaz, thank you very much for your presence, thank you very much Parvesa for your presence, and thankful to you Dr. Wasim for your presence online. Viewers, as you know that Kashmir is a nuclear flashpoint, and this dire situation demands that United Nations must have to feel responsibility and resolve the Kashmir issue. And also, while India committing atrocities in the occupied territory, that must be held accountable by the international community for its atrocities, genocide and war crimes within the Kashmir, illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz Nasir.